my name is Bob Nicholas. I'm host for the show Occupy Nation. And today my guests are Fran Foley Lawrence and Pam Lazenby. And what we're going to do is have a little discussion about the Occupy movement that's present here in Boise and across the rest of the nation. And I guess what I'll start off with is with Fran. About your background, if you could give us a little bit on that.
Sure. My name is Fran Lawrence. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. My husband is a disabled Vietnam combat veteran. Together we've raised 4 amazing children and we are now grandparents.
Good. Pam, how about you?
I have been a special ed teacher for the last 24 years and I have been active in the Occupy movement here in Boise. I don't have human children. I am very active with animal rescue, and I have rescued, rehomed, and rehabbed over 1,200 dogs and cats in the last 20 years.
Oh, good, good. Fran, let's kind of touch on your philosophy about the Occupy movement, how it relates to youth.
Okay. I believe America is an incredible country and I consider it a blessing to be born here. I'm proud to be a citizen of America. And I believe that the founders of this country meant for us, we the people, to keep watch and not let our guard down and to keep this nation great. And as a citizen, I have a lot of concerns now for this country. I see so many changes that have nothing to do with what the American people need or want. I believe these changes are changes that the founder of this country would never have wanted, never intended, and would have expected us to stand up, and that is why I support Occupy Boise.
Okay. Fran, how about you? I mean, Pam, sound alike.
I agree 100% with what Fran is saying,
Mhm.
and I became involved because of my concerns with the direction that this country is going. I'm extremely concerned about the corporate personhood. Money is not speech, and corporations are not people, and those are 2 of my biggest immediate concerns, that I believe our country is being taken over by the corporations that we've got. Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, people who caused this financial crisis, are pretty much in charge of the financial picture in the U.S. government, and that's got to stop.
I see. Fran, you mentioned a moment ago about the founders of the country. What would you think they were, along the lines of like maybe Thomas Jefferson or Washington, or who founded and wrote the Constitution in its present form and all, what part of the constitutional part would you think the founders would be, quote, up in arms about in regards to the way the financial situation is in the country today?
Oh my goodness. Well, for one, Congress is supposed to be responsible for printing our money,
Yes.
and they are not. The Federal Reserve is, and the Federal Reserve is a private entity. It's as federal as Federal Express.
Uh-huh.
So that's a big problem, and that's been going on since 1913.
Okay.
And that's where a huge source of all the problems are coming from.
Right, okay.
And also, another thing is that the media is pretty much bought. And Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson said, when the press is free and every man able to read, all is safe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the press is pretty much bought and not free to speak freely,
Right.
we're not really being told the truth. And I have concerns about that, of how free are we as a nation if that's happening.
So would that be like the local news or even the major news networks, where they have sponsorship control in a way they kind of dictate what kind of news they're actually going to cover? So we aren't really getting the whole truth about something along those lines.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's not just what they cover, it's what they don't cover.
Right.
America experiences media blackouts a lot.
Right.
A lot.
Right. Does that kind of, do you see anything along the lines of what she's describing?
Oh, that absolutely,
yes.
absolutely resonates with me.
Mhm.
Particularly Ron Paul. I believe there's been, I
Yes.
know for a fact that there have been whole media blackouts of Ron Paul's campaign and his
Uh-huh.
messages. And while I don't agree with a lot of things, I think that if we're going to be forced to have a Republican president next time, I think he's closer to what we believe in than certainly Romney or Santorum.
So, the freedom of the press is one of the, I guess, the liberties that we are supposed to have. Are there any other civil liberties that you can maybe point out that perhaps the general public isn't aware that we're losing our civil liberties pretty fast?
Oh, my goodness. Well, yeah. Of course, there's free speech. That's
Right.
something. And Benjamin Franklin said, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freedom of speech.
Mhm.
And it's becoming more and more regulated what free speech is for the people. However, the Supreme Court ruled in 2010, Citizens United,
Yeah,
and that corporations are people and money is free speech.
yeah.
And that's not right. And I don't think our founders had that in mind. I also have a lot more concerns about civil liberties being
Mhm.
taken away as well.
Right, the corporation as people, that's, several years ago, there was a fad called Pet Rock. And, you painted it, and you carried it around, that was your pet. So it was kind of like trying to personalize a rock. So if you have a corporation, they're trying to do the same thing, is to take a entity that doesn't walk, doesn't breathe, doesn't do the normal things that we do, and calling it a person.
I would say, have you ever watched a corporation give birth? Have you ever watched a corporation laugh, cry, console another human being?
Right.
Corporations are not people, and I believe that I have some suspicions that perhaps the Supreme Court members were bought on that particular. I have more than a slight suspicion that could have very well been the case, and if we don't stand up and speak up now and get millions more, thousands, millions more people doing the same, then I suppose we get what we've asked for.
Yeah, kind of
Yes.
like you get what you pay for, kind of thing. But is there any other civil liberties that you can
Oh,
add to the NDAA?
the NDAA. Yes. The NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act,
Yeah.
signed by President Obama December 31st when we were distracted by the New Year's Eve celebration.
Oh, okay.
It allows for indefinite detention of citizens. And what it is the budget. Every year, Congress authorized the budget of the Department of Defense through a National Defense Authorization Act. However, this year in 2012, there was a highly controversial provision in there which places the American military at the disposal of the president for the apprehension, arrest, and detention of those suspected of posing a danger to America. And that concerns me.
Right. The recently in Oakland, it was pointed out by somebody that the mayor of Oakland had contacted Homeland Security. And Homeland Security was giving the local police support for how to manage and how to structure taking down the Occupy settlements there in Oakland and all over the country. So it's puzzling to me is that it seems that Homeland Security is becoming, and all the police forces in the country locally are becoming an extension of a private army for the CIA, the FBI, and Homeland Security.
I would agree.
So that's, why and where did that come from?
I agree that even our local police are becoming militarized.
Yes.
And they're being funded and supplied like SWAT gear
Yeah,
and riot gear.
yeah. Why do they need to dress up like that to stop a demonstration of people who are not armed, or peacefully gather together in a protest, and yet they come at us with batons that can crack your skull and pepper spray that could possibly blind you or cause someone who has asthma to choke to death. So, and the other thing about that is a person on the line as a police officer at a protest. Can you imagine that somewhere in the crowd is a neighbor of his son or a neighbor of his daughter, and he has to cross that line and go out there and crack their skulls? And I think that's why they wear a mask, so that you can't see who they are, and they can hide behind that kind of coverage, so that your kids may get bashed, but you won't know who's doing it.
I don't know about that. That's an interesting theory. I believe that they have to see what they're doing for their own protection. I think it's more of a mindset. They're getting a paycheck. They're being told what to do. They have they're supporting their families.
Right.
What are they supposed to do? And also, when you're in a culture, you're indoctrinated with beliefs. And I'm not saying what they're being told or not. I just know that this is a possibility, that they have to believe what they're doing is right. They're getting a paycheck. They're supporting families. These orders are coming from high on up, and I'm sure they have to believe they're doing the right thing. I also believe it would take a lot of courage for someone who knows the truth to step aside and say this is not right, and that's what needs to happen.
There was a police officer in New York who came from a neighboring city and did exactly that.
Yes,
he
that's
got
right.
busted and arrested for participating in the protest because of his beliefs that what was being done was not right. The same for that soldier who chastised the New York police for them doing what they're doing was not right.
That's right.
Part of this, I think, is tied into, there was a novel called Fahrenheit 451. And in that novel, the protagonist, they were to go around and burn books, and because reading books was forbidden. But the guy who was in charge of doing that, and his moral compass was pointed in the direction of actually preserving the books.
Right.
So that's kind of why I pointed out, is that someone who's on the line, and as you just said, it's going to be hard for someone to stand there and actually say, this could be my neighbor's son, this could be my neighbor's daughter. Do I really need to do this? That kind of thing.
Well, I would point out that Hitler was responsible for burning millions of books.
Yes.
And I really I'm very fearful. My father was born in Dresden, Germany in 1929 and was raised as an orphan in Hitler's Germany. And I see a lot of parallels to what is happening. I believe that we, the people, in effect, are being exterminated, if you will, politically, not physically perhaps, although if you refer what Fran referred to the NDAA, we certainly could be exterminated physically. This act allows anyone to take away any person at any time with no charges of any kind, similar to Guantanamo Bay. And I believe it's time for people to stand up and protest that, and to get involved with both their state and their national senators and representatives. I would also like to point out that I believe 25 to 50% of the Idaho legislature are not running for re-election, and I believe we have until March 9th, in Idaho at least, to run for office if we decide that that's something we feel it's important, and I would like to get that message out there.
Right, and the problem I have with that is that the notification for that kind of came along 2 weeks before it's due. It's like a book
true.
report that you're
Not much time to prepare.
Yeah, not much time to prepare to
Right.
go out and get 50 signatures from people in your district in order to run for local office for that district.
Right.
You might know 50 people, but I don't know if you can go out and get the 50 to sign it. Most people don't want to sign anything anymore. Uh, and,
I'd like to see something
oh,
about,
sure.
that seems real extreme about extermination. However, looking at facts, because I love facts, that Monsanto is responsible for 90% of all genetically modified seed in the U.S., and biotechnology giant is also the leader of developing genetically modified seeds and resulting crops worldwide. It's called the Terminator seed. It cross-pollinates with other crops that aren't GM, genetically modified, and they don't reproduce. So they're called Terminator seeds. Not only that, is that
They don't regenerate.
no, they
Right.
don't regenerate. And they have been found to be linked to organ damage, namely the liver and kidney damage. And this is published in the International Journal of Biological Sciences. And the study is calling into question the safety of the frankenfoods, as they're called. Now, the reason I bring this up is because President Barack Obama, what he has done is recently appointed a former head of Monsanto as the new head of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And right now they're using like the FBI to target, harass, and incarcerate Amish communities because of their homegrown food. And it seems that we're having no choice but to eat the food that Monsanto puts out. And look, even recently the U.S. government has labeled anyone who stockpiles more than 1 week's worth of food a potential terrorist. That goes back to the NDAA. All you have to do is be suspected. And
1 week of food, you said?
1 week.
1 week, then I think we're all terrorists. By that definition, I think pretty much anybody who has a week's supply of food in their pantry must be a terrorist.
Well,
This is outrageous.
we're supposed to get ready for the pandemic. That it's not. Is it going to come? It's when is it going to come?
It's being manufactured right now.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't know. What I'm saying is, to be responsible for your family, you should be prepared if there is a pandemic or a natural disaster, because the stores will be closed. If there's a pandemic, people won't be able to go to work the water, to work the stores. So why put Americans in that position?
So pandemic, and as I thought was related to more towards disease as opposed to, you're thinking that because Monsanto is having these modified seeds and everything, that a pandemic of death is going to occur because
No.
of people. Oh, okay.
No, I'm just saying,
I'm
look at the control that America's having over Americans' choices of food to grow. It's against the law in some states to grow your own food.
In
It's
your backyard?
yes,
You can't have a backyard farm.
yeah, in some
Oh,
states. And
Really?
also to collect rainwater, it's against
That's
the law.
right. Rainwater is not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes,
can't
and
do
then
that.
raw milk is a huge issue. In California, a SWAT team came and raided a co-op because they heard that they sold raw milk to someone who wasn't a co-op member. So the FDA, excuse me, also keeps it from our knowledge that walnuts are healthy for us, that cherries can cure arthritis. They told Diamond Nuts that they could not put on their packaging that walnuts were healthy for your heart because they had omega.
Pecans,
Three?
pecans, that
But look at potato chips. They're called heart healthy. And recently,
yeah,
this
I've learned
gentleman of the head of the FDA had pizza deemed as a vegetable.
Ketchup. I believe President Reagan declared that ketchup was a vegetable.
fruit. Oh, vegetable.
That's
right.
closer than
Yes.
pizza. So
Okay. So is I'm thinking here that so overall it looks like that the hope is that Occupy around the country, that because of things that she's pointing out and that we try to point out here, is that these issues will become knowledge among everybody. But most people out there are still wondering what Occupy is all about, other than some financial things that the banks have messed things up. these issues here, I don't think are becoming common knowledge.
Well, I think Occupy has struck a nerve, and that's why the police are being sent after them. That I think that's why the media blackout on them. That's why the bad media, because they're hitting on something,
Yes.
and it's going to the root of the problem, and that's why they're getting the bad press or no press. And of course, yes, there are things that happen that are not good, but that happens with every group of person,
Right.
especially when you're out in the open. Anyone can come in and do anything and be associated with your movement. But the thing is the banks are not happy with it, with the Occupy, because I think
course.
Occupy points right to the banks with the financial crisis. And I suggest that for anyone to watch the documentary, an Academy Award winning documentary, Inside Job, and it really explains what happened. It was criminal what the banks did to America. And
Kind of
And
like
corporations as well, yeah. If I could just point out, I'd like to point out that the police are part of the 99% when they're not in uniform.
Right.
I mean, most police make a very modest salary, about in the line of what teachers make, perhaps less. And so when they are not in uniform, when they are fathers and mothers and people in the grocery store, they are part of the 99%. And I don't know if they've even thought about that or if they even realize that that is the case. And so the other thing I would like to encourage people to do, in addition to seeing the Inside Job movie that Fran just referred to, is to have showings in your home. Bring your
Yes.
friends and neighbors and colleagues.
Absolutely.
Do a showing at work. I believe the movie is for sale at $9 in most stores. And also encourage people to move their money from the major banks to credit unions. Support your
Absolutely.
local businesses, support your local credit unions, and even national credit unions, because they are nonprofits and they're employee owned typically, and they are doing what's right for people.
Right, I read that, I think 4 million people in maybe a month's time took all their money out of Chase Bank and moved it into their local credit union. I did that, I moved my money from Chase to the local credit union. I felt that is, at least in part, my way of silent behind the scenes protest
Sure.
over the banks.
Sure.
Make it more difficult for them to maintain their profit margin, and but I was reading just today that the banks are still trying to sneak in some extra fees that we don't know about, and that's probably because of media blackout, that they're not covering that kind of thing because they've probably been told not to do it.
Right.
Right, so
Right.
it's, and I wonder why. It just seems that because of all this, it makes me angry. And I think it makes a lot of people angry and somewhat helpless because we don't know what to do. And in the past, it was the 60s demonstrations for civil rights. And people got hosed, they got bit by dogs, they got clubbed on the head. And most people do remember that. And I, for one, do not want to be clubbed in the head or bit by a dog or anything else, or maced. So there has to be another way for us to participate and still make a statement to the quote, the powers that be, to back off or listen to us or something along those lines. It's troubling to me that there aren't more people out there like down at the Occupy encampment downtown, and everybody has a fear for their jobs. You pointed that out about the police officers. They have to do their jobs, and of course they're in a bind that way. So myself personally, and it hasn't seemed to me yet that any clear solution is actually presenting itself, other than discussion. At least make the
the discussion is happening because those tents are up, because there's been
Right.
controversy.
Right.
So it's been working. The
Right.
only thing is that with the bad press or no press, that there's some people who are not able to see that we are on the same page, all of us, Americans. And that's where our strength is. United we stand, divided we fall. And I really believe these political parties are two sides of the same coin. And that the media takes these two sides and divides us. So we can't even talk the same language, and we're arguing, even though we have the same concerns. And
Mm-hmm.
The same points. I would just like to say Idaho in particular, I believe, has stood out in the nation as an exemplary
Yes.
example of an Occupy movement and encampment. We have received letters from both the Idaho State Police and the Boise Police commending us for how well we have cooperated, how well we've worked with the law enforcement agencies. Just this week, Judge Lynn Windmill, federal court judge, declared that we had the right to maintain our tents as a symbol of free expression and speech. That was after our Idaho legislature and the governor signed into law a bill that basically was to tear down our encampment. And so I believe that that other cities around the nation could really stand to watch us and follow some of our lead.
Right, Fran, earlier before we started here, I asked if anybody has heard about the encampment since last night. I attended a GA last night, and they were warning the people there that if you're on the site, do not go into the tents or anything like that, because there was a possibility sometime around 1 o'clock that they were going to come in and make sure people aren't staying there. Oh. Okay.
I don't think anything happened.
Oh, right,
But
right, okay.
If they're not supposed to be sleeping in the tents, then
Uh-huh.
you know that's the consequence, is getting arrested or getting apprehended or stopped or whatever
Mhm.
if they're sleeping in a tent.
Okay.
We're trying to be lawful. We're
Right.
trying. We are being.
We are being lawful.
We are being lawful. We're,
Absolutely.
yeah, and we're looking at all the other occupies and learning whatever we can from them. So we all have something to learn from each other. But I am very proud of Occupy Boise.
Okay. This has been a very good discussion here, and next week we'll have some more Occupy people, and thank you, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.